Hello, everyone. Welcome to TIFF Stay at Home Cinema, brought to you by TIFF and Crave. We're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and at tiff.net/stay-at-home. My name is Cameron Bailey. I'm the co-head and artistic director here at TIFF, and thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we're watching Clemency, starting at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 p.m. on the West Coast, and our special guest is its brilliant star, Alfre Woodard. Before we get started, just a few shout-outs. We are on Indigenous land, and I'd like to acknowledge first the Indigenous storytellers of Canada and of Turtle Island from coast to coast to coast. We'd like to thank our frontline workers who are still working to keep us safe and healthy and fed. I'd also like to thank our government partners, the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, and the City of Toronto. They've been longtime supporters of TIFF. And huge thanks also to our corporate partners, our lead sponsor, Bell, our major sponsors, RBC, L'Oreal Paris, and Visa. And thank you also to the individual donors and members for supporting us, especially right now. Alfre Woodard is an actor of remarkable range and depth. You've seen her in films like Spike Lee's Crooklyn, John Sayles' Passion Fish, Lawrence Kasdan's Grand Canyon, and Gina Prince Bythewood's Love and Basketball. You've seen her on television in Luke Cage and Desperate Housewives and Saint Elsewhere and A Series of Unfortunate Events. That is range. Go back and watch her performance in Steve McQueen's 12 Years a Slave. That scene on the porch, that's range. She received some of the best reviews of her career for her performance in tonight's film, Clemency, from writer-director Chinonye Chukwu. The New York Times called her performance tremendous. Superb, said the Wall Street Journal, and the Globe and Mail called it the performance of the year. Tonight, you can see for yourself. But first, the woman herself. Alfre Woodard, welcome to Stay at Home Cinema.
Hey, Cameron.
How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm so happy to see you. I'm not normally this happy. I'm going through what everybody else is enduring and trying to grow from, but I'm smiling now just because I see your face.
It's so good to see you too. The last time we saw each other was the end of January. You were in Toronto shooting, and you came by TIFF Bell Light Box to do a special screening of Clemency. That was very kind of you in the middle of a shoot. And so much has happened since then. Feels like that was a lifetime ago. I just want to know, how are you doing right now? How have the last few months been for you?
You know, the first, I self-isolated for 3 weeks in Toronto, and that was a saner, safer place to be than it was south of the border then. Mm-hmm. So I was like, no, I'm going to stay up here where everybody is doing what everybody, collectively deciding what the common good was. Mm-hmm. It was bats out of hell down here in the States. But then Trudeau said, I'm closing that border in 2 days. And I ran for the border because I knew it would be a while. But the first few months they were wonderful and healing. I had like focused time that I realized I hadn't taken time without an agenda since I was 11 years old.
My God, really?
Yeah. But then everybody got Zoom fever, and I Zoom. They know you don't have to travel to get to a meeting, so you can have 5 meetings in a day. But I'm trying to. There is no normal, and what we are hoping to get back to needed a lot of repair anyway. So I'm just hoping everybody across the North America and South America, everybody cooperates to the point that we could get back out to building a normal that's even better.
Let's hope so. You were born in Tulsa, as I understand, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
You were in Tulsa for Juneteenth this year, in the Juneteenth.
Virtually.
What's that? Virtually. Okay. Virtually. Speaking to Tulsa virtually, of course. And you talked about how Black people have had to learn how to laugh and cry at the same time, in the same moment. Can you talk a little bit about what it meant to speak to that crowd in Tulsa on Juneteenth and what you meant by that?
Oh, and I wouldn't say we learn it anymore, that when you are an infant and a toddler, you take on language. You actually already have a language, but then you pick up the language of the new space you have been born into. So we, that same way, when I say Black folks can, we laugh, we weep, the shake dancers can also holy dance at the same time, all those things, because that's what our experience on this continent has been since 1619. So, and it makes the same that people talk about living between worlds, or deciding which world you live in as a person of color or as a person of dominant culture. But it's like anything else. We code switch all of that naturally, because what an individual does, even civilians, and especially an artist, is the reason that you get out of the bed, you open your eyes, you open your door, all of that is to communicate with other human beings. And so whatever it takes, that's what you do. It's just that the walk that we have had to walk as the Africans in America has demanded that of us. And I think it is just an incredible legacy for all people to be able to watch us. We should be teaching that. You invoke the indigenous people at the beginning, not only learning from indigenous people, but learning from the people who have always had to make a way out of no way. That should be the foundation of North American history and South American history. I don't know if you're going to do the rest of the world, because not only is it just understanding where your feet are planted and where your real roots are, but it is also the history of all of our peoples, and it is the history of our modern day nations. It is the history. Indigenous history is Canadian history.
Absolutely.
African American history is American history. And that's the legacy that we pass on to all of our children, of every stripe and color and stance and worshiper, is the lesson of possibility. Like if my great grandfather walked out of slavery with nothing but the little pouch of rags that he had on his back, and he voted the first time he could vote. There's a poll tax where he paid to vote. They are in that census they were enslaved in the census in 1840. 1840 was the first I caught sight of him. But as soon as slavery was crashed and burned, he bought land. He figured out a way. So all of that to say, everything is possible. Everything is possible at every moment. And besides all the culture and the flavor that we give to America, that is seen in the world as distinctly American, it is African American culture. Besides all that, it is just the demonstration of what is possible, collectively and individually.
Beautifully said. And it makes me feel like all of what you have said is a kind of a frame for the work that you did in Clemency. This is a film that premiered at the Sundance Film Festival last year, won the Grand Jury Prize, played as a gala presentation at our festival in Toronto last September. As I said, got you some of your best notices. And it's a very kind of contained performance that you give as Bernadine Williams, a prison warden who's got all of, I think, everything you just mentioned in her, but when she goes to work every day, she's got to kind of just bring that together and tighten it up. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the character of Bernadine, what drew you to her, what drew you to this project that Chinonye Chukwu came to you with?
Well, first of all, I'm always interested in doing something that I don't know how to do. I mean, that's one of the great blessings of being an actor, is that every time you go to work, you got to learn something. So, that means that you're in a constant state of discovery. I mean, even if you're 80, 85, you have to learn something to go to work. And so that we're never bored for that reason. But I didn't know. Hey?
What were you trying to learn with Clemency and Bernadine?
Well, first of all, I had to cop to the fact that it was like, a Black woman warden? I'd never heard of that. I really hadn't heard of a woman warden. So already it's like, I think, I've been to some of the best schools in the country. And if I didn't know that, I figured the vast majority of people didn't. So let's go look at that. And then Chinonye took me on a prison tour of about 5 Ohio prisons. And my eyes were open. Whenever you approach a character, what you have to do, your job is to be able to stand that character up to the point that they are a human being. And then so you have to be able to reason out of that human being's point of view. So that you've got to come off of your own stuff and find their voice, because you depend on the storyteller or the filmmaker to use what you bring to tell that story. You trust that the audience is going to walk away with what you hope they do, with something that moves them forward. And so my job was to be on the other side of the equation that I'm usually on, which is the petitioning and the vigils and trying to stop executions. What about, I knew nothing of the people on the inside. I had visited prisons before, doing a play and also going to visit a friend or two, but I had another task. And so when I met the people, and they very graciously, because no one had ever thought of looking at this from their point of view, they graciously opened their entire stories to us, and we were able to go around with them. These are the administrators, the wardens, the deputy wardens, that whole group. And then I had the privilege of being accepted by 2 condemned men, Chinonye and I, to visit with them. So when I did that, when you know that lives are in the balance, you approach your work even more sincerely than you should anyway. And your work basically is done for you if you work the way that I work and many of my colleagues work, which is making yourself available. You use the words that your writer has given you. And
Hmm.
you do all those things that you would, same way you would warm up a cello. We know those things. I won't get too technical because we're not talking to an audience of actors. But by the time you get to camera and to action, all you are doing is bearing witness.
Hmm.
You get yourself out of the way you move, the way you speak, the way you think, all of that. And with a situation like this, like I said, when lives are in the balance, there is no room for how you might want to flourish or how you might want to do a jeté on your way across the floor.
Can you get a little bit technical? Because I am curious. I think people would want to know, because I know you pay a lot of attention to your craft and you've been working in this business for a long, long time. When you're preparing for this role, let's take this role in particular. And this is a woman who, as I said, is very contained and brings so much dignity to her work. And that's what she wants to give to the inmates that she's working with. Technically, how do you get there?
It's a matter of, again, I'm going back to instruments. I was an athlete growing up and a musician. And so a lot of my approach to my work comes from how I prepare for a game, for a meet, how I prepare for an orchestral concert.
What was
And
your
so,
sport, by the way? As an athlete, what was your sport?
oh, I did everything. You know, I grew up in Tulsa, which, you know, and of that generation, we had, you know, if you couldn't, even the nerds and the uncoordinated people were out there throwing balls. You just did. So I played, you know, basketball, softball, ran track, and we had a football team for about 3 months, and then they made us stop it because it was supposed to be flagged, but because women weren't accustomed, girls weren't accustomed to charging ahead and stopping on a dime and just touching, everybody kept flying into each other, and it was just like, it was injuries. But one of the things, and it's because of it is the character of people that are wardens. What I found out was a lot of people come to being a warden from the mental health field. They come to it from social work. I always thought, oh, they, you know, first was thinking, you know, what little girl thought, you know what, I want to be a warden one day on death row. It's like, do I really want to meet this person? But then when I started to meet these women, they were more balanced than I am. They were steady. They'd be people in your book club or at your church or your temple or your synagogue. And the thing that was different in terms of rhythm is that I am an artist, and you're going to know what I'm thinking because it's going to be flying across my face. You know, if I can't talk, you can read it in my body. But there are people who live not constricted, but they communicate in a different way. It's not through their body. It is through their action, not through their words a lot. And one of the things that I noticed, what I had to do was really use the breath, calm down. Again, talking about stepping out of your own patterns, besides your own way of thinking. And it's just finding a quiet space. When you think about it, and Bernadine says, I've got 2,000 bodies in here that I am responsible for. So if you think of a person who is either too emotional, too muscular, any of those things, it just throws the balance. She came to it from the mental health profession. So you want a person that's calm when things are on the line. You want a person, if you are being taken down a hallway to be put to death, you want somebody that's going to help you to walk down there. You don't want people wailing, crying, being, overly empathetic because they're not dying, help me get down there. And people that work in the services of being with human beings when they're in distress, it makes sense to me that that would happen. So a lot of breath, a lot of stillness. I do stage work. I trained on the stage. I don't do as much stage work nearly, but to do a gesture on the stage and to communicate something, if I just now, that would be too big if I was in a film. But how would I express that on the edge of a pen, a straight pen? I think about those people that, it's so corny, and I've never bought one because I'm just not interested in that minuscule expression. But it is amazing that people can, when they paint scenes on a grain of rice.
Right.
Yes. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but for the cinema, I'm a believer in bringing that same gesture as full as possible, but within the frames. One of my favorite actors, besides Mary Alice and Vanessa Redgrave, is Jodine Page. And the thing I liked so much, and I look to about Jerry Page, is that she enters the frame in full speed and she leaves that way. Because sometimes as film actors and camera actors, people will get too careful and itsy poo. They're supposed to be eating and they're like taking little bites. It's like, so there is that thing, and that's why we practice it. That's what's so exciting about it, is that you get to try to perfect that every time out. And with this, it was finding a way to be calm, to be, to express yourself in a way that didn't alarm or inflame a situation, but have
She's
it
like
not
still
be
water,
dead.
Hey? Yeah. I was just gonna say she's like still water. She runs deep.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, not to be a militaristic and aggressive, but I'm not a warrior. I could never be a warrior. I get too emotional. I'll go charging at somebody at the wrong moment. I might jump on them for a reason that is not the reason of the campaign. And so, although, but we need warriors. We do. We hope that they are a last resort, but there are people that can do that. And I cannot.
Okay. Actually, we've got a question from one of our members related to the process you've been talking about, which is, what was your process for getting out of character? Was it difficult to shed after days of shooting? And another actually related question about that last close-up and what it took to kind of get to that point. We won't spoil the film for people, but there's a beautiful way that it ends. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and about, did you carry Bernadine with you through the whole shoot?
Oh no, I'm not a method actor.
You know, like that. Okay.
No, my life, I got enough to deal with in my own life. And also, I am a joy-filled person. And when I'm not, I am trying to get to joy. The thing is, there's billions of people born. None of us have the same fingerprints. That's how particular we all are. So when a writer writes a character, it is, even if it's not allegedly fictional character, it is somewhere from the experience, even in passing, and probably a conglomeration of people that they know, that's something they've seen. And so, but it is a human being. So I feel like my job is to find that very specific person and to honor them, honor their voice coming forward, because the thing that all of us want, we want to be heard, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be understood. And so I feel like if I am using some of my own drama or memory to get to a moment, whether it's tragic or comedic, then I'm intruding on that person's story. That thing's not about me. So I call those people personality actors, and they can be interesting, but there's always them. You're never going to see the human being that the story is really about. Right. And so, so it makes it easy when they say cut, you go take off all the stuff, you wash your face, and you leave it right there.
Mm.
And you come back to it, you can trust. You don't have to hold on to it. I'm not a Daniel Day. And you know, I'm not hating on him, but it's like, dude.
You don't need to do that.
Anyway, so because we don't want to work all the time, but if you're always in character, you're never yourself for most of your life.
You couldn't do that and still do the amount of work and the quality work that you do.
But anyway, it is. I'll tell you what really affected me, and even saying it now, probably because I'm tender from 20 weeks of self-isolating, but I could walk away from that every day and come back to it. But the toughest thing was, it took me a month, because it was a month before we started shooting after we did our prison tour. It took me a month to stop spontaneously weeping. So it was the encounter in the prisons with people that affected me deeply. And I realized, you know, I'd just be somewhere at the farmer's market. I'd pick up, you know, a papaya and just, and then I realized what it was that, you know, our job, Lorca said, the song, the poem, the picture is but water drawn from the well of the people. We give it back to them in a cup of beauty, that in drinking they may come to know themselves. And so artists are actually channeling the joy, the confusion, the pain, the wonder of the people around us, of human beings who don't have the language to express that. So what we have to do is find ways to keep that passing through like a weather condition, keep cleansing our spirit so we stay healthy, and we keep our instrument tuned to be able to play a good clear note for the next concert.
Oh my God, Alfre, that is just beautiful. So beautifully said. Thank you so much. I think we're out of time. We're going to start the movie now. I just want to thank you for doing this, for joining us. It's so good to see you again. I hope to see you out of isolation when that's possible at last.
You know, as soon as Trudeau said I can come back, I will be back.
All right, let's see if I can get in touch with Trudeau and get you back to Toronto.
Everybody be safe, be happy.
We will, thank you. And you too, we're going to press play on Clemency at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. on the West Coast. Alfre Woodard, thank you so much for joining us for Stay at Home Cinema.
I appreciate you, Cameron.
I appreciate you. Bye-bye.